Hello, this is Jim for the Monopoly Project, and we're doing one of our floating book reviews. We're here on the Monopoly Project yacht. Every successful real estate entrepreneur has a yacht, and unfortunately it's a Bikini Girls Day off, so it's just me. But we're cruising on Val Vista Lakes. It's Thursday afternoon. It's still about 101 degrees, and we are here to review 3 books, and they are The Patriot's Fate by Alaric Bond, Stephen Saylor's book on ancient Roman history, Dominus, and finally Edward Slingerland's book on Drunk, on why humans continue to get intoxicated even though there's so many deleterious effects. And so we're going to go through those books. I'm still recovering from my toe injury when I broke 2 toes by dropping a weight on them. We're almost at the point of amputation, but fortunately God saved me, and it looks like the toes are going to be okay. But I'm going to be on my feet. I'm off the crutches, but I'm going to be not working out or anything like that for at least 2 months. In any case, let's get started with Okay, it's Jim. I'm back on our third book. We're going to do only half this book for reasons I'll explain later. We're on the Monopoly Project yacht, and we're headed home. It's sunset, and so we're getting the last good light of the day. And the next book on the list is Drunk by Edward Slingerland, and it's 369 pages hardcover. It was published this year. It's subtitled How We Sipped and Danced and Stumbled Our Way to Civilization. And in it, Slingerland hypothesizes why intoxication is continued in human societies, even though there's the obvious negative effects of drugs and alcohol, especially alcohol, are well known. Edward Slingerland is a professor at the University of British Columbia, and so the book is entertaining, but he also backs his assertions and theses with actual studies, and I'll give 1 or 2 examples and link to them on the webpage. But the objective of the book, as he states, is to explain why virtually every human society uses some form of intoxicants, especially alcohol, even though its effect on individuals, families, and society as a whole is obviously negative. We've all seen, the negative effects of alcohol on individuals, families, groups, and, accidents and everything. So on page 10, he says a convincing answer to the basic question of why we want to get high in the first place. And on page 11, he states his thesis. My central argument is that getting drunk, high or otherwise cognitively altered, must have, over evolutionary time, helped individuals to survive and flourish, and culture to endure and expand. He goes on to say there's some very good evolutionary reasons why we get drunk. What this means is that most of what we think, and this is his words, what this means is that most of what we think we know about intoxication is wrong, incoherent, incomplete, or all of the above. And I agree with him. On page 12, he claims we could not have civilization without intoxication. And after finishing the book, I agree with him. And so on pages 13 and 14, he has a really interesting explanation of why alcohol is the perfect intoxicant. And I made the comment that, sorry, Huey Lewis in the News, you're wrong. Huey Lewis in the News, of course, wrote a song and a video called I Want a New Drug. But I got to agree with Huey that if we could get rid of the hangover part, then alcohol would be the perfect drug. There's some more comments on this nature on page 98, so I'll let you look at those if you're interested. He does warn against 2 recent innovations, and recent, he means like in the last 100 years and the last 500 years for the 2. One is the recent invention of distillation. Up until 400 or 500 years ago, we didn't have liquor. We didn't have the ability to distill alcohol to make it, 50, 100, or even 200 proof. You can buy Everclear, which is 200 proof, ethyl alcohol. And a lot of people, addicts, do that. And so that's one of the very negative things that's happened in the last 500 years, which he says humans have not adapted to. And the other is the drinking alone. I'm not quite sure that was not uncommon in the old days, but he's going back to the tendency in the United States, at least recently, for people to do things alone. Bowling Alone was a famous book written by a sociologist, and certainly when in the COVID times, this is I think everybody can agree anecdotally, and I'm sure there'll be studies that show it as drinking alone or drinking and at home is vastly increased over the past year. And so so I agree with his general arguments there that these two things are negative and they don't fit in the alcohol as a cultural device that he's arguing. And so on page 35 he makes an interesting comment, I thought. He said, "I was trained as a historian of religion." And he uses that as a jumping off point, how much of what we religious people do is irrational or illogical or seemingly random activity. And when people see that in the consumption of alcohol or drugs, they point out that it's illogical, rational, and random. But we basically accept that that's religion. So he's making the comment that, I think he's making the comment that we shouldn't look at intoxicants as something unique. A lot of what we do as humans is strange, and so he's just putting it that way. And then he does discuss the two current theories of why alcohol and drugs in general still exist in society, and I won't go into them because I can let you read them. One's the hangover, not hangover from drinking, but hangover from a past evolutionary device where alcohol was useful, specifically in giving calories to those who could find those kind of things and preserving food and drink. And the other is the hijacking, is that it's a behavior that was useful in the old days, but now is no longer useful, and it's been hijacked. I don't quite buy either of those, and I think he refutes them, but I'll let you look at those two theories. And then on page 64 and 65, he makes another very insightful comment. He says, "Humans are powerful in groups precisely because we are weak as individuals." And if you think about that, that's true. We are, individually, we're, thin-skinned, we have no weapons, compared to, say, a lion, who has claws, or a bear who has claws and teeth and a layer of protective fat that you couldn't hurt a bear with your bare hands, no matter what you did. We humans are extremely weak as individuals, but in groups we've conquered the planet, and that was even before we had guns, when we just had sticks and clubs. And then of course when we found out how to refine metal and iron and make swords, then we were really on top of the world. And then when we invented guns, which would project them, and you could do these activities at a distance as opposed to putting yourself at risk, we're undoubtedly the king of the world. And of course you see that in a lot of science fiction stories, where the plot is that we run into some alien species that is as good as us or better than us, and what do we do? And it all comes together of working together, and the aliens don't. And so anyway, I'm running out of light, and I'm going under the bridge. So is alcohol I always thought of alcohol as a CNS depressant, central nervous system. But he points out that yes, it is, but it's also biphasal. If you look up the definition of a biphasal drug, it fits alcohol perfectly. And so you can see we're inside going under the bridge. And so it fits alcohol exactly, and it does have effects in his argument that he backs that up. And as a I said earlier, as a religious historian, he does quote scripture. There's a number of examples where he quotes scripture. And just one example on page 117, Proverbs 31:6, "Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress." So I appreciate that he quotes scripture to back up his comments. And then you're probably not going to see it here, but the punchline of this cartoon I'm about to show you is, "Remember Windows Me." Windows Me was a failed Microsoft operating system. I bring that up because apparently he's a fan of the XKCD comic strip, which I used in my last opportunity cost blog post. And I'm not sure you can see it here because the light's getting bad, but you can see it on the website. And he quotes again that strip. And so I'm gonna pause now and in tribute to Edward Slingerland. I bought a bottle of wine, and you can see it's Trader Joe's, so that's always very good value at Trader Joe's. And I can't read the inscription because the light's failing for me, but you can probably read it. And so we'll try it. And also I want to point out that I have been banned by the family from using real glasses because I keep spilling them on the tablecloth and staining it or breaking the glass. So I've been relegated to only using sippy cups. So I give thanks that I have 3 grandchildren because we have lots of these sippy cups now, and so I'm much safer for the tablecloth with this. So let's try the Trader Joe's. Blessings to you. Give thanks to God for all He's done. And I might mention that my foot, which I broke 2 toes like 15 days ago, and the first diagnosis by the doctor was very bad. They were gray. There was no feeling, and there's been no pain. There was no pain then. That was 4 days after, and there was no pain. And he said, well, unless the capillaries reform, we may have to take off 1 or both of those toes. And I said, well, how do we make the capillaries reform? And he said, we don't know how to do that. I can't. Is it going to happen or not? And basically, this is from Scripture. It says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So that afternoon I prayed, and I felt it in my toes, and by that evening it already looked better. 2 days later we went to 2 vascular surgeons, and they said, yeah, it'll probably be okay. And then a week later, after he saw it, he took off the bandages and said, wow, you are lucky. And I told him, I'm not lucky, it's God. So anyway, I'm recovering from that. I'm off the crutches. I'm hobbling around a little, but maybe in a month or 2 I'll be back to weightlifting. And I did buy steel-toed shoes, so at least I'll be a little safer. In any case, let me finish before the light's gone completely. It's good. Trader Joe's is usually good. So, and I don't want to spill anything. Where's my copy of Drunk? I'm going to stupidly put the glass on top of the book, and you know what's going to happen. That's why I've been banned from using real adult crystal stemware. Okay, where was I now? I'm losing my light. Okay, and let's see. Okay, on page 166, he discusses the concept of considering every important decision first sober, then intoxicated, or vice versa. And he quotes a study, a historical fact. In ancient Persia, no important decision was made without being discussed over alcohol, although it would not actually be implemented until reviewed sober the next day. Conversely, no sober decision would be put into practice until it could be considered by the group while drunk. And I think that's a really good decision process. In fact, my first real boss at TRW in 1979, wearing my TRW hat, Step Mission 1, Mac, really great guy. He was, we'd have to do employee reviews for raises every year. And of course, he told me that the way he did it always was that he would write the reviews at work. And then he would go home and he would have 2 scotches, and then he would rewrite the reviews. And I think that's a really good way to look at a lot of things, is give it a little thought in both states, and it does help a lot. So and so anyway, so I'm going to break it here. I didn't have time to finish the notes. I figured out that it's better to take notes because then I can put them on the blog post, and I can also read from here and not just talk stuff off the top of my head. I think it makes for a more effective review. In any case, that's going to be my halftime break for Drunk, and I was about to pick it up and spill all the wine, so I didn't do that. So I'm doing good. And so cheers to you, and we'll see you on the completion. of the Monopoly Project Floating Book Reviews. Thank you all. This is Jim from Val Vista Lakes. Goodbye. Okay, this is Jim for the Monopoly Project. We're back to finish our book review of Drunk. We left off last time where we were talking about making decisions by considering them soberly and after a few drinks. And so we're going to pick up from that. We got our notes as we told you here. And so we're going to just step through these last few points. And to see, where were we on page 169, Slingerland makes the point that a strong case can be made that alcohol-facilitated sociality plays a similarly pivotal role in academic innovation, and my parentheses, and business. In the footnote below, in the back of the book, he claims that the Oasis, which is called the O, is now closed. It was a bar at Stanford in Menlo Park, played a key role in the development of the computer industry, and you can see his footnote there. Hopefully you can see that back in the book. I actually spent a fair amount of time at the O in the mid-70s, but I can't say I saw any of that type of activity. But of course, I didn't run in those circles with Steve Jobs and all those guys, so there's probably a lot of truth to what he says. And interestingly enough, he starts a really good discussion away from alcohol about psychoactive drugs on page 173. He says psychedelics are powerful depatterning or entry-inducing agents, seriously disrupting the normally orderly flow of neural traffic directed by the PFC, which is the part of the brain that tells you what to do, and the first thing that alcohol affects, it shuts that down. He also goes on to say this includes microdosing of LSD in Silicon Valley, which is, I guess, now a popular thing according to him. And then he goes on page 208, where he reports that psilocybin users considered it, quote, the single most experience of their lives, or one of the top 5. And they're now actually being used, psychedelics are actually being used to treat various addictions. I know that in Oregon they've passed a law not necessarily decriminalizing psilocybin, but they're trying to get it to be put to use it for treatment of addicts. And I guess it's still listed as a Category 1 drug. Category 1 drugs are heroin, marijuana, surprisingly enough, was on there, but they're drugs that are purportedly have no medical use, and therefore they're banned. So interesting, on page 179, Slingerland, who is Canadian, as I mentioned earlier, he laments that Canadian regulations prevent grant money from being used for the purchase of alcohol, and I guess a large portion of his income for his group at the school is from grants from the government. And he goes on to say, quote, American and Canadian federal regulations forbid spending grant funds on alcohol. He says, in my view, this represents a serious barrier to scientific progress. I think Slingerland needs to microdose his accountants with LSD, because then they could figure out a way around this, like most of the U.S. defense industry has done. Money is fungible. There's always ways to use it on what you want as opposed to what it was given for. He mentions Office Christmas Party. It's a movie. It's a fictional example of the benefits of alcohol and drugs, both on team building for this software company that's going under, and scientific innovation. The key idea that she comes up with, one of the characters, is internet through the power lines, and that it ends up saving the company at the end after all the craziness. I did watch the movie. The first half was great. The second half didn't finish strong. It is entertaining. If you have 2 hours to kill, it's worth seeing. And the internet through the power lines idea never really did take off. I'll send you the link on the website, where it says a number of fundamental challenges, the primary one being that the power lines are inherently a very noisy environment. And of course, internet, you're trying to transmit data, and data on a noisy environment is hard to deal with. And of course, the other big one in the United States is step-down transformers, where you would lose the entire signal. So, and then on page 195, he has a very funny discussion of people's faces after 0, 1, 2, and 3 drinks. I guess this was a scientific study done by someone else, not him. But it's exactly what you would expect. You can see right there. And I'll put a better color picture, although this may be black and white. I'll put a better picture overlaid on the video. You can see it's getting windy here on Val Vista Lakes. We're on the Monopoly Project yacht. Again, unfortunately, it's the Bikini Girls' day off, so it's just me. But I put my captain's hat on because I may have to do some executive decisions based on this wind that's coming up. They say there's a storm south of us, and it's coming this way, so you can hear the background noise, and you can see it's a little choppy. And then let me finish the review, because on chapter 5 he spends the whole time discussing the dark side of Dionysus. Of course, Dionysus is the Greek god of wine, and so it's basically listing all the bad things about alcohol and even the other drugs. And he discusses the heritability of alcoholism, and also its differing effects in different cultures, and he uses the example of family use of wine in Italy, where alcoholism rates are relatively low as compared to solitary vodka swilling in Russia, where alcoholism rates are just through the roof, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They had laws against it, and they tried to suppress it, but once the Soviet Union collapsed, the subsequent governments did very little to discourage the use of alcohol, and so it has become a major problem. In fact, he mentions the statistics that from 1992 to 94 in Russia, which was the time when it happened, the average life expectancy of a Russian male fell by 6 years. That's just amazing. And it was virtually all due to alcoholism and alcohol-related accidents and events. So, and he on page 236, he states something that's very interesting. I don't know if I believe it, or at least I don't know if I believe the second of the 3 parts. But he states, it is very difficult to pass out from drinking beer or wine. It is nearly impossible to kill oneself. Once distilled spirits are in the mix, all bets are off. You can hear our friendly guard dog over here waving to our neighbors, making sure that we don't attack her property. So, anyway, let me repeat that. He's making 3 different claims here. The first one is that it is very difficult to pass out from drinking beer or wine. I sort of doubt that. I've seen it happen a lot, and I must confess that I've done it once or twice. Well, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't just beer and wine. So anyway, but I've seen people, and maybe some people are more susceptible to alcohol than others. My injured foot itches. Sorry, guys. The second part, it's nearly impossible to kill oneself, quote, using beer or wine. It's an interesting comment. He doesn't footnote it, so I don't know where he got that claim. I guess I don't know. I don't know if I believe that or not. I mean, wine is 10 or 12, 13% alcohol. Basically, he's claiming that it's just to die from an alcohol overdose. You basically have to get your blood alcohol level up to 0.5, where it suppresses the breathing, and you literally you die of not being able to breathe. And so I don't know if that's true. The second, when he goes on and says once distilled liquors in the mix, all bets are off. That's certainly true. It's very easy to kill yourself by, and at least once or twice a year we hear in some frat party where some guy drowned a quart of some liquor and died literally from this. So that's definitely true. And finally, to wrap up the book, on page 283, he starts his conclusion with the story of Jesus turning water into wine as his first public miracle. And this is to show, for Slingerland, not Jesus, the centrality of alcohol in human culture. And, the first thing that Jesus does in his public ministry is he makes wine. And so as a Christian, I find that very interesting, obviously. And of course, the blood and the wine theme goes throughout the scriptures and the story of salvation. So anyway, all in all, it's a great book. It's very entertaining and it's very educational. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you definitely should read it. Like I said, there's a lot of backup. There's voluminous footnotes where he, references where he gets information and everything. So that's our floating book review for the book Drunk. We're going to finish that up. The one more book we have for a floating book review that we've read in July is In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, and you'll be seeing that very soon. It's a book by Pastor Mark Batterson. Again, a very, very good book from a spiritual, what should we be doing as Christians. In any case, this is Jim signing off. I'm not headed into the sunset, I'm headed out of the sunset, and I will see you on the next Monopoly project. Okay, we're here at Bella Vista Lakes. We're getting ready to leave. James, say goodbye. Goodbye. James is waving us off. I'm smiling. Thank you, James.